Hey everybody, how's it going? Well, some might say that, the writing was on the wall when Rockstar or Take-Two or whoever was in charge asked for Grand Theft Auto to get $100 on release. Then all these other, console makers, developers started echoing that sentiment. They started, asking for an $80 game, possibly a $90 game, $100 game, right? And now here we are with like the absolute and utter greed of these corporations, these companies. And I hate to say this, but it was kind of, you know, I want to say expected, but also to a fault of like streamers and like, all the like the media that surrounded them. Like it takes, you know, a look from any, business executive to just look at, the rooms of these people, plastered with toys and memorabilia, lights, lighting up. What else? Well, whatever, they want, like collections of, Funko Pops and entire racks of games, and it becomes so normalized that I would have expected them actually to do it sooner, but I think they were just trying to assess like how many people had those possessions versus how many people didn't have those possessions, right? So, yeah, the increase of all things, and one of the reasons that I made this video was Randy Pitchford, right? Now, I don't really have anything truly against him. I just think his design philosophy is antiquated, right? Like he wants $80 for his magnum opus of a game, and it's full of that pretentious writing that is supposed to teach us how to be a better person. I don't really buy it. It's like more of the same, right? Like whether you're playing Concord, whether you're playing anything, you're always gonna have these almost kind of weird limitations when it comes to games like that, where you're not necessarily the target audience, but apparently you should be because Randy Pitchford and like Gearbox Games, said so. And it's like, uh, it, like you know what I mean? Like we don't hate somebody, but it's like they don't like do that good of a job or something. So, case in point, like I've played and shown like a lot of gameplay from Risk of Rain, and yeah, they got the original not vocalist, music artist to do the soundtrack again, which is a big plus to me. But I mean, the levels are okay. Some of the power-ups are nice, but it just seemed to me like, you know, the design philosophy of Gearbox games was always to, lead you along. Like instead of delivering something that's finite and like, good, like it'll just give you, oh, this is just a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like the difference between the expansion of Seekers of the Void and then the new one, which is Seekers of the Rain or something like that. I don't know. Like it's a huge difference, and I just don't see Gearbox games, Borderlands as being worth $80, regardless of what he says. Now he said that he is not in charge of the price of the games, and this is a bold-faced lie. He does not want you, the customer, or the public to pay a cheaper price for these games. You're going to pay a premium for his games. And to that I say, You know what? This is going to be an inevitability. Like, as much as I like to stand here and argue against it, I was about to pay, like, an additional amount for, Monster Hunter Wilds for the special edition and stuff. So, like, I can see how, like, sometimes it's a bit much. Well, depending on the game, right? But I find that the whole playing a game and then burning yourself out to find another game is something that only career streamers will do nowadays. Because I see that as almost unsustainable with the current market, right? Like, unless you're going retro, like, you don't even have to call it retro. Like, you can call it, like, last gen, right? PS4, Xbox One. I think, right? That's what it's called. Anyways, like you can go with those systems, and you're still good to go. Like they're still making games for it, Night Rain and the like. Which is why I say pick and choose because we're always going to have an alternative to this kind of nonsense. Like this is a game where let's be honest. What is the best soundtrack like available in Borderlands? Like I don't hear any like music awards that they won. I don't care too much about it because what you get with FromSoft games is always the same. It's like you're gonna get this highly artistic or orchestral score, or in the case of Armored Core, you get like an alternative, techno, very experimental soundtrack, but it's always high quality. It's like I could listen to the soundtrack like a million times and never get sick of it. And like, in fact, almost every single FromSoft game I have, I always put up like turn the music volume louder so I can hear the music volume, better over like the sound effects and stuff like that. Because I really think like they do a good job with their music. Well, and now we got to address the elephant in the room, which is the Doom Dark Ages game. So a lot of people are saying it's a bad game. So what I found in the game is like there's a genre. I might sound a little old by saying this, called shoot 'em up, right? Or shmup for short. And it's just like very simple, like you arcade games, like you travel either vertically or horizontally across the screen, usually with a spaceship or something like that. And attack like all these different kinds of monsters or like fighter jets or whatever, and then like get a high score and stuff like that. And it always have like this you know willingness to move out of the way of dodge like all these attacks, which are highly telegraphed. Oftentimes they would have like bright colors to indicate danger or whatever. And the reason I bring this up is because Doom, the Dark Ages, just so happens to follow that design philosophy. So you'll fight like, let's say, a Revenant, or I don't know, like let's say a Cyber Demon, right? I don't know if they have that in the game, but they'll have like an attack which telegraphs it's the hitbox of the projectile, right? So it's basically forcing you along a very strict path of dodge left, dodge right, Simon Says type of stuff. Now, oftentimes, like even in a game like this, like let's say Armored Core, right? Like it has that as well. It's just you don't really notice it. Like it does a better job of like conveying movement and projectile and like uh, area of effect, area of attack, area of denials, stuff like that, right? But obviously, Armor Core is like very movement based, very kinetic in terms of like its movement, which is why like a lot of people have been finding the new Doom not to be so good. It's just not great. Which I hate to say it is a product of the greed of Microsoft and these companies. You know, like these companies, they want money, but they won't want to invest a lot of money because they see like other people being successful with less, like let's say live services or online games with like loot boxes or online shops and the like. Um, they want those specific games, right? And I'll give you an example. So I like MechWarrior a lot, and I've shown like footage from it, even though my saves have not transferred properly. So like I'm probably gonna like remove it off the hard drive or just like put it somewhere on like the removable hard drive, so I don't have to re-download it. But like yeah, it's not great because I mean excuse me, the first game comes out, right? And it was experimental. Nobody's has seen the franchise in so long. It's only like inner sphere, limited to very few mech chassis, etc., etc. Right? And as add-on content came on, then I started getting notice, like taking notice of it. Even though I to be honest, I don't really like the combat of MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries that much. I find that it's like too restrictive considering like it wants you to basically use just a few types of mechs that possess like you know the better loadouts, the better weapons, etc., etc., right? And so nobody really cared about this game, and not to mention the company itself, like they introduced, I would find probably one of the worst forms of multiplayer. I don't even know if it's like one of those multiplayers that actually doesn't need PlayStation Plus or like Xbox Live membership, but it's this weird like multiplayer where you have a host that yeah it's basically like IP stuff from back in the day, if you know what I mean. Like it's very archaic and almost pointless. like you have a join code for your game specifically, and then you can join the host's you know game, use his mechs and whatever, and that's how it is. It's yeah, and the second game that came out, which is more or less like an add-on game, but it's like I think they touched up the engine, whatever. Mech Warrior 5 Clans, and they're trying to go for a more wholesome, single player esque, you know, cinematic narrative in the vein of like most other games of the like, right? And the reason why this game, MechWarrior 5, failed like miserably is like how are you gonna have a game, right? And yeah, I get that you're introducing like clan mechs and clan technology, all that stuff. It has less mechs in it than the original game. And when I say original game, I don't mean the add-on content. No, I mean like the actual like mechs in the game. Like there's more customizable mechs and usable chassis in the first base game. So right off the bat, bad impression, right? And then it's getting really greedy. I don't know why, but like they have some sort of add-on content, and it it just seems so lackluster. And like as a fan of the series, like I was looking forward to this game, and this very much soured my experience almost completely. So yeah, I agree, man. Like, I mean, most people have fond memories of, the first three Borderlands. I don't know, right? I haven't played any of them, but I did watch them from afar. I like the idea of like vehicular, bleh, using vehicles in a shooter like this. But yeah, this is the way it is now. Companies just want more. They want to brick your systems. They want you to pay like $100 for a controller. And like one of the things that I've always noticed about controllers is that they also happen to have like a button on the joystick, right? And at first, like, whatever, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal. But then you have to factor in things like stick drift, and then like ask yourself, well, if stick drift is an issue, right? Then what happens if I just keep pressing this button down as intended, right? Well, case in point, you're just gonna wreck your controller. Uh, this is just the norm of like, having these game consoles and stuff. Like, maybe somebody can, vouch for their game controller. They've used their L3, R3 buttons, or, left joystick, right joystick, you know, buttons to better, degree of success than I have. Like, from my controllers, I have, I think, one of my PlayStation 3 controllers, both of my PlayStation 4 controllers, and thankfully not my PlayStation 5 controller. Like, they've all experienced some sort of form of stick drift. So this idea that like, you're gonna be paying more for these consoles, the controller costs like $100 and all that stuff. Like, it was always done for the sake of making money now because they see these streamers as like, these immature people who are going to like, throw a controller or like, just buy more stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe they'll like break the controller as they're holding it and then just like buy another one. But, the greed that these game companies have is just, it's so vast that like it's mostly due to the idea that like, and maybe I think I've experienced this, not so much as like, okay, I'm a game developer or whatever, I'm somebody special, but it's also like you have to think about what you want to do after, all fun and games are said and done, right? So for me, I was always going to think about, that aspect of life. Whereas most people who buy, play, and collect these games, they'll just run right through them until like, they're done with it, or, you know, they just need to buy another one, right? Like, and that's why these consoles, that's why these online services, that's why these games, everything is going up in price. Like the best thing to do is to support specific companies like FromSoft, some Capcom games. I don't know. I heard bad things about Dragon's Dogma. I want to give it a chance though when I get the time because I already have Monster Hunter Wilds, so my plate's full, right? Um, Ghost of Tsushima, so Ghost of Yotei. Um, yeah, like I am not really looking forward to like a lot of games, and maybe that's my personal taste in games, or maybe I'm just happy with what I have, like Armored Core, Elden Ring, Night Rain's coming out soon. Like I think the idea of artificially putting a value on a game is possibly like the biggest mistake that Randy Pitchford and pretty much all these game developers are talking about. Like they're just going crazy because when you think about it like this, right? And I don't know exactly what software they're using, but if you're using 3D Studio Max, I think it, requires like a licensing fee and it's quite expensive. So, these companies, the longer they have to develop games for, and then like license these, softwares out, hire people, pay benefits, pay salary, all that stuff. That's where these, game budgets, blow up and, become out of control because it just happens to be that people who make these games, who develop these games, they just don't know how to manage their money. Oh, I said what I had to say, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, people are always going to be greedy, but you can value, the people who value you and your time. Like me. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.